Hello again. The subject of our talk today is about the revolving door to hell on earth. In October 2024, the United Kingdom government announced that it is going to spend £22 billion, around 28 billion US dollars, for building projects to capture and store carbon emissions deep underground from energy and industry production. Before that, in December 2023, the Congressional Budget Office in the United States published that the expenditure on carbon capture technologies between 2011 and 2027 would be $21.9 billion US dollars in the form of direct funding and tax credit for US companies. The same report mentioned that the current capacity to capture carbon and store it deep underground is just 0.4% of the nation's total annual CO2 emissions. And if all the planned projects to be completed, this capacity will increase only to 3%. In a 180 pages comprehensive review article published in June 2024 in the Journal of Carbon Capture Science and Technology, entitled A Comprehensive Review of Carbon Capture Science and Technologies, the authors concluded that, quote, CO2 capture from flue gas sources still face considerable challenges impeding further development and commercialization. Accordingly, more extensive studies are required to explore the commercial prospects of a CO2 capture process, end quote, and continued to say, quote, the primary factor limiting the commercialization of CO2 capture technology is it is high cost, end quote. In other words, all of these billions will be spent on a putative technology that does not actually exist, dreaming that it will, by some miracles, meet the great urgency we face globally to reduce CO2 emissions. Apart from the fact that this hypothetical technology is very complicated and expensive, as any reader of this comprehensive review can conclude. However, this governmental spending, this excessive governmental spending on a non-existent technology is predicated on the principle that we should continue business as usual in the form of extracting more fossil fuels from the ground and keep burning them, confident that a premature technology that does not exist will come to the rescue sometime in the future after such huge investments for developing these expensive technologies. This logic is floated widely and promoted heavily by the fossil fuel companies and their lobbyists as the ultimate solution that does not require weaning the global economy from fossil fuels, which is what humanity urgently needs in order to escape the climate collapse ravages that started to show their ugly manifestations after heating the planet to almost beyond the recovery point. It is worth remembering that the Earth's average temperature now is 1.5 Celsius above what it was before the Industrial Revolution. This level of increase in the overall planet temperature was considered the target of the Paris Agreement of December 2015. This kind of wishful thinking about non-existent technologies is very convenient to maintain the status quo and preserve the immense power of the fossil fuel companies in every aspect of the human life globally, as well as the gigantic wealth and profits that many of these companies do not know what to do with these profits other than investing them in speculation in the global stock markets and lending them to the developing nations at a very high interest rate. We also have to observe that this narrative of carbon capture technologies is almost exclusively funded by the taxpayers, not by the fossil fuel companies, which sometimes spend a minuscule fraction of their overflowing profits on these projects for public relations purposes, i.e. greenwashing. Of course, this minute spending does not constitute even a rounding effect on the gigantic figures of their huge profits. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development states that, quote, the annual cost to fight climate change, protect biodiversity, and cut pollution is projected to cost nearly $5.5 trillion annually from 2023 to 2030. While the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, declared in August 2023 that, quote, fossil fuel subsidies surged to record $7 trillion in 2022, end quote. Although what I stated about what the United Nations states about the cost of mitigating the cost of climate collapse, and what the International Monetary Fund declared about how much support and subsidies received at the coffers of the fossil fuel companies, it's very, very clear. And although what I said is very obvious and self-explanatory, we have to reiterate what it means. It means that the world is spending $7 trillion to subsidize fossil fuel companies, which is more than what the world needs to avoid the calamity of a climate collapse that will cost humanity $38 trillion per year starting in 2050, which means eroding 19% of the total international GDP, according to the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research in a report published in April 2024. This practice of subsidizing fossil fuel companies to extract more fossil fuels can be literally viewed as a stifling approach to other clean sources of energy, such as wind turbines and solar panels, as the green energy companies will not be able to compete with the fossil fuel companies, while the latter, the fossil fuel companies, receive $7 trillion, which makes them able to always offer cheaper energy than any other clean source of energy. It is clear that this practice is a blatant interference in the free competition, in the free markets principle, as preached by the defenders of capitalism. This also reflects the depth of democracy deterioration worldwide, as no rational or irrational human being would prefer to leave this earth to be uninhabitable to his or her children and grandchildren. It is hardwired in the human brain to propagate its genes to the following generation and protect them from perishing. Nonetheless, even in the staunchest capitalist democracies, the governance system operates in contrast with the principles of traditional capitalism as envisaged by Adam Smith's invisible hand that controls the interactions within the free market economy, which the free market economy has been redefined and reshaped in the new liberal era to become a deformed and a metamorphic form of state capitalism, admixed with, I quote from one report by Oxfam, this state capitalism is admixed, quote, with cronyism, corruption, and monopoly power, end quote, and controlled by, quote, the revolving doors between the private sector and civil service, as declared by an Oxfam report published recently in January 2025. And this is a very interesting report. I recommend reading it, and it was entitled Takers Not Makers. Apparently, the global fossil fuel companies still hold the remote controller of these revolving doors that Oxfam talked about between the private sector and the civil service. This cannot change. This revolving door will not stop working without a dramatic increase in the amount of activism and organizing led by the ordinary human beings who want to preserve planet Earth for their offspring. This should happen now, as unfortunately there is no more time to waste, and unfortunately there is no other solution other than more activism and more organizing. Thank you very much for listening today, and I look forward to meeting up with you in the near future. All the best.